Okay. Our mission, Helping Parents Heal, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and allow for open dialogue. Attendance today at this meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Welcome, everyone, and welcome, LaVonne.
Thank you. That was beautiful. And I'll let you keep letting people in as I introduce LaVonne. And I feel very honored to have LaVonne speaking tonight. She and I met at a conference that Jeffrey Olson was having in Sedona. And she's so beautiful and such a wonderful public speaker. As a matter of fact, if you're friends with LaVonne, you can see that she spoke on the steps of the, not town hall, I'm sorry.
The county building.
The county building
County.
in Salt Lake City a few days ago, and it was amazing. But let me go ahead and just introduce her first. LaVonne Wells Sandberg is a spiritual teacher, global speaker, medium, pure light communicator. She offers loss and grief support to parents who have experienced the death or transition of a child. LaVonne is the shining light mom of Kiva. As a spiritual teacher, LaVonne has made it her life's work to provide systems for people to create peace after the death transition of a loved one. She can connect to spirit while providing compassionate understanding and insightful shares during a time of need. LaVonne provides private and group sessions. Her workshops include Connections and Communications, aka Life After Life, and Connections and Insights. Please visit her website, www.lavonnewells.com, for more information. I will be putting that in the chat box. And please, without any further ado, welcome LaVonne Wells.
Hey! This is exciting. Oh my gosh. A little bit about myself. I'm born and raised Bostonian, from Boston. I moved to Utah in '91. I didn't know why I moved to Utah, but I can honestly tell you it's been the most eye-opening, most spiritual experience of my life. A lot of my spiritual growth came from Utah, through the ups and downs and challenges and the cultural difference. It was huge coming from Boston to Utah, like a shock. But I love Utah. I love the mountains. I love the outdoors and the ability to connect with nature. I am a part of this group because of the transitioning of my daughter, Kiva Wells. And I say a lot of times death/transition because I do work with a lot of people that they associate the word death or dead or things like that. What I know to be true is that nobody ever dies. No one has ever died. And that is one of the things that my daughter, Kiva, continues to teach me and talk to me about, and coaches me on how to coach other parents. And so a lot of my focus is with parents, moms and dads that have lost children, and of course nothing's ever lost in the sight of the Creator. But those are words that we associate with and can connect with. And so it's just been my life's work and my life's passion to really assist people through the grieving process in ways that are considered in some of my other circles as untraditional. How I really got going, but let me back up to Boston. As a youngster, my first experience of someone passing, transitioning, I'll just use the word transitioning, from the physical form back to spirit, was when I was 6 years old. And I remember my stepmother telling me to go wake up my sister, and I went to go wake her up and she wouldn't move. And when she didn't move, and I told them, my stepmother came in the room and she shook her so hard that her body flung and hit the dresser. And I personally believe that was her final blow. So here's a 6-year-old witnessing all of this. The backstory to that is we were starved as children. And she was the youngest. And so because of her being the youngest, she was the most frail. And my stepmother would say to us, come have dinner or breakfast or lunch, and she would sit us all at a table, and then she would point at us and say, today you're going to eat, and today you're going to eat, and today you're not going to eat. And then that person would have to get up and leave the table. And so that's how they slowly began to starve us. My father was around. He was gone a lot for working, but he was around. But that's just kind of the backstory of it. And I remember my dad rushing into the room, picking her up off the floor, putting her on the bed, and telling us all to get on our knees and pray for her. And I remember as a 6-year-old, I really believed that at 6, I was a very ancient soul, and I knew that this was not okay and that this was wrong. And I said, well, we can pray in the car. I remember those words as a 6-year-old. We can pray in the car. She has to go to the hospital. And I remember them putting her frail body in my lap in the car, getting us to the hospital, and the doctors being very upset and saying, call the police, these kids aren't going anywhere. My sister Sharon, she was DOA, so she was dead on arrival. And from there, we lived, my brother and my other sisters, there was 3 of us left, we lived in the hospital for 3 months. They had to retrain us on how to eat basic food like rice and vegetables and just basic stuff. And then we were thrown into the system. And so I grew up in the foster care system, and that's a whole nother story. But it was an experience that took me from where I was as that child to where I am today and where I'm serving and assisting other people. And I'm just going to fast forward in that story. In 1999, yep, 1999, I gave birth to my daughter Kiva, and she came 3 weeks early. And I remember going to the hospital. The doctor was very worried about what was going on because her heart started failing while she's still in the womb. And so we actually were able to, I was actually able to give birth to her, but they took her from me and quickly put her in an incubator and took her over to the Children's Hospital. And so she was diagnosed with something called McCune-Albright syndrome, which is a really rare condition. And I'm not a doctor, and after all these years, I still, sometimes have a tough time describing what was going on. So basically, she had 2 sets of cells, and this is how it was explained to me. One was wreaking havoc on her system, the other one was functioning properly. And so she had, her body basically was shutting down, but at the time we didn't know that. And she was in NICU for a while, and then I was able to bring her home, but she stopped breathing. She kept having other conditions and I would rush her to the hospital. So we were in and out of the hospital quite a bit. By the time she was, I believe, 4 months old, we took her back to the hospital again, and she never came home. And she transitioned when she was 5 months old. What happened was her whole endocrine system was wreaking havoc. So everything was shutting down, overproducing. Keep in mind, when she was born, she was only 4 pounds. At this point in time, she's about 7 pounds by the time she turns 5 months old. And that's when she transitioned. But so she had a pulmonary expert, she had endocrinologists, she had cardio specialists, she really took on so much in that small body, and every time she would master one thing, something else would show up. Now, whenever I share this story, I share this story in large groups in so many different places. I share my story to strengthen others and to inspire others, because even though that was it was a bittersweet experience, but it was a very bitter experience in the beginning of it all. She just everything just started to open up for me. Just everything just started to open up for me. So every time I would go to the hospital, I would notice that there were people or energy or beings around all these other children, because we spent so much time in the PICU at this point. And it got to a point where parents would come up to me and saying, we hear you can see things, you can see things. I'm like, no, I can't see anything. I said, I can feel, I can sense. But the reality was, the more the sicker that she got, the more I was able to see. And I realized I was able to see because when she was in her process of transitioning, as a mother, I was going there with her, you see. So I had one foot on this side of the veil and one foot on the other side of the veil, because that's where my baby was going. And you know, we are multidimensional beings, so we do have this ability, and we sometimes forget that we do. But before we are human in the singular body, we are multidimensional, and so I could tell I was on both sides of the world. I mean, I'd be talking to my friends and then turn and start talking to someone else, and they'd ask me, "Who are you talking to?" And I'm like, "Right, them, right there. Can't you hear them? Can't you see them? That right over there." And they thought I was going crazy. And I'm one that doesn't care if people think I'm going crazy, so I just kept doing what I was doing. And then it got to a point where I found myself, at this point, I didn't give you my entire history, and I don't think, well, for now, for this talk right now, I don't know if that's important, but one of the things that I was doing at the time, I had been a part of so many different religions. I had been a Pentecostal. My father was a pastor. When foster care, I was part of the Pentecostal faith. The second foster home, I was part of Jehovah's Witness faith. Friends always invited me to their churches, their synagogues. I would always go. I've always been a truth seeker from a little child, because I knew there was always more. There was truth out there. At this point in time, when I had Kiva, I was practicing Buddhism. And so, and I also believe that all of those experiences has brought me to the place and the point where I'm able to go where people are at when they're grieving. If they're coming from a different set of beliefs, I can go there with them. And because I know that the system that maybe they're a part of. And also, I'm really trusting spirit when I'm speaking with them at the same time. And so, what happened was, I was also a practicing Reiki practitioner. I'd done it for years. I was teaching Reiki. I was doing all these different things. And so they would see me, my daughter would be in distress, and you could see the monitors of where her heart rate was out of control, her blood pressure, and I would just go and lay hands on her. And so the other mothers and other parents would see me doing that, and they would whisper in my ear, "Can you come do that for my child? Can you come do that for my child?" And so I would just find myself doing rounds, going to all the children in the unit, and assisting the parents that way as well. I don't do as much Reiki except for my immediate family and on my own personal stuff, because I'm more about the speaking and the teaching, spiritual teacher. I'm more about teaching people how to fish. Because once it becomes truth to you, and once it comes up from the inside and out of you, you don't question that. You may even have a question, but it quickly goes away. And so what I found from spirit is, they're like, you're going to do this differently. You're not like every other medium. You're not going to do it the way they're doing it. You're going to teach them how to do this for themselves, because they have the ability. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. I just want to tell you the part, I'll shift into the part where it was time for Kiva to transition. They had her on 17 medications. Those medications were a cure. There is no cure from acute Albright syndrome. They were all suppressing conditions, medical conditions within her body. So think about a 7-pound, 5-month-old baby on 17 medications. And they really ended up, NIH got involved out of Maryland, National Institute of Health, because this was a condition they had been researching for many years. They had never seen a case like this. The doctor told me, he said, 1 in a gazillion you'll ever have another child like this. This is a 1 in a gazillion experience. And there were doctors that would change in and out, in and out, in and out. And there was this one doctor that really was keeping his eye on Kiva. And I just remember people would come in and say, she may not make it, or she's not going to have a good life. And I would tell them, get out of the room. I have faith. She's going to be healed. I don't believe. I was doing Reiki. I had people come in from the Catholic Church. I had people come in from the Mormon Church. I had people come in from the other church. She was getting blessed by the Rinpoches out of Tibet. I mean, we had the whole, you know, and it's just who she is. She always gathered. And she brought people in from different walks of life and different faiths and different beliefs. And you could see it when she was still here physically, that that's what she does. And that's what we do together as a team. And I love that about her. And I remember I just had this faith. And I said, anybody that's going to be negative, that's going to be in her room, you can step out. I won't have any of this. As a mother, it is my place and my job to hold space and hold energy for her healing. And so I will do that. That is my charge. And I remember going home one night exhausted. It was probably 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And I go to sit on my bed and I just kind of lean back to rest for just a minute. And all of a sudden I hear this, it's like this collective voice. It was a collective voice and they were saying the same thing, but you could tell they were gathering. And then my room just lit right up. And I'm like, okay, I am not asleep, but am I asleep? And then they began to talk to me and they spoke in unison. And now at 20 years later, I know now that it was the collective. I know that I do a lot of work with the collective, highly spirited beings, and I always call in the highest authorities of light in my work and in what I'm doing. And but so the collective came in and they spoke in unison, almost like one choir, and they said, we know that you believe that she will be healed. We know that you believe and we honor your faith, but it's time for her to go. And I remember hearing that, and there was a part of me that took a deep breath that was relieved, but there was another part of me that was full of sorrow, and I cried and I wept. But then I went immediately to the space of appreciation, the space of gratitude that they would take the time to come. And I know this isn't for everyone, hasn't had this experience, but for them to come and take that time to I say, minister to me and to speak to me and very clearly. But then they explained something to me. They said, she is having a tough time letting go too. She knows that it's her time, and I'm paraphrasing because I'm attempting to remember everything that was spoken. But they said, when a mother has a child, there is something that happens. There is a connection, a heart connection. And they gave me this visualization. I'm gonna put my hands up here. And it's like when the child, it's like the love, it's like this. So it is very difficult for this to be released. Because now that she's here and she's in the flesh, she's like, I love my mom loves me, I feel this love, I don't want to go, but I know that I came here, and this is why she came here for many reasons. I came here to assist her on her path. She's been struggling about what it is that she's to be doing and why she is here. And she has asked for evidence of the creator and evidence of angels and evidence of all these things. So I will come and I will be the physical manifestation of everything that she has asked and that she has requested. And I'm telling you, it just blew, it still blows me away for her to be willing to just come for a time and a season. But she came with a very clear intention. And I remember after they continued to just minister to me and just offer me comfort, the light began to dim in the room and I fell asleep. And I walked into that hospital, and I remember the doctor that I spoke to you all about earlier coming up to me, and he said, this is my week. What do you want me to do? He says, we don't have a cure. There is nothing else we can do for her. As a matter of fact, we're putting her on morphine. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but being put on morphine at 5 months, 7 pounds, that's not really a good sign that things are going in a positive direction. And like I said before, she's on 17 medications and they were just suppressing conditions. And so I looked at him and I said, I want you to take her off life support. At this point, she'd been on and off life support, CPAC, life support, CPAC, life support, life support, and unable to breathe on her own. And I said, I want to hold her, you know. And he said, I will make that happen. And he said, but we have to meet with the ethics board again. So this would have been the second time that we met with the ethics board. And when we met with the ethics board, I didn't ask the doctor to be there. I didn't ask the nurses to be there. When I walked up there, those nurses that cared for Kiva were there sitting in the chair. The doctor was there sitting in the chair. It was like a fine-tuned symphony, like everything, when it was time, everything was gathered, and that was the universe that came together to support myself and to support Kiva in her transition. Because at this point, she was even finding it very difficult to escape, because when they would take things off of her, like the life support and things like that, they've got these darn alarms on the machine. So when she would try to sneak out, the alarms would go off and they go back in and CPAC her and throw the life support back on. It's, you know, all this high technology. And so she was having a tough time too. And so that Spirit was letting me know, now it's your turn to be her voice, to be her witness, and to assist her in her process of transitioning. And we got up there and it was all decided, and the nurses just spoke and they said, we have parents here all the time that want to disconnect. It's either because of stress, they're worried about money, they're worried about this, they're worried about that. It's the main thing is just the stress and the anxiety, and they don't know what else to do. And they said, but if LaVonne says it's time for Kiva to go, she knows her daughter, and the most humane thing we can do for her is to take her off life support. Now, keep in mind, they had found 4 bleeding ovarian cysts. They had found a clot on her spleen. They had found a lot of other things, and that's why they were putting on the morphine. And they checked all of her records, and they said it's a go. One doctor came in late and said, well, her adrenals are bad. Why don't we do the surgery on her adrenals? And, you know, no. And the doctor came down and said, these are the forms for you to do surgery, for us to do surgery on her adrenals. I want you to understand the adrenals was that much of the problem. Everything else was this much of the problem. And I looked at him and I said, do I have to sign that? And he said, no, you can deny it. And I said, I deny it. One of the toughest decisions I've had to make was taking her off life support. And the part I forgot to tell you is that before we got to the point of taking her off life support, Kiva came to me while she was in the hospital and I was home. And she says, be my voice, I'm ready to go. Be my voice, I'm ready to go. And so when I was making all these decisions, I had confirmation from the collective, I had confirmation from Kiva, I had confirmation from the doctor. And when I told him I will not sign that, he says to me, he says, good choice. He said, let me tell you what would have happened. Before we could even get her on the table, as soon as they started doing the anesthesiology and all of that, she would have passed on the table. There's no way she would have even been able to get the surgery. So he said, you made the right choice. But of course, as a doctor, you can't say that, you know, and just before they're asking you to sign the paperwork. So I really believe that he was definitely an earth angel, and he has really assisted in that process as well. So when they took her off life support, I was able to hold her. Remember, at this time, I'm a practicing Buddhist at that point. And I'm sitting there, and Lama from our Sangha came in with his wife, and she read from the special prayer book that assists the soul to transition from the physical body. And he did mantras and he sang songs. It was just a beautiful ceremony in the room. We had a private room in the intensive care unit. And the nurse came in and she just said, I don't know whether to smile, laugh, cry. She said, the energy is so beautiful in here. And she's like, I just don't know what to do. And, you know, and I just held her, and he was doing the prayers and the chants and everything. And then she finally gave 3 deep breaths. And I laid my hand on her heart And I watched it, and it still touches us, right? I just noticed how she would inhale and she would exhale and she would inhale and she would exhale. And I thought about how precious the breath is, you know, and if any of my talks that you hear me talk about or speak on, I'm always talking about the power of the breath, the gift and the life of breath. And I remember she gave her third breath, and I immediately felt her. I'm holding her like this, and I immediately feel her leave the crown of her head. And then immediately standing right next to me, her putting a hand on my shoulder. Now I know that was her. And even the Lama, who is now Rinpoche, he looked at me and he nodded and I nodded, and he just rang the bell, rang the bell, rang the bell, rang the bell. And he just said, who is she? What soul is this? Because even in the Buddhist tradition, this doesn't occur. There's like a 3-day, you know, the whole, it's out there in so many different belief systems. And there she was. And I remember crying and crying like a baby. And at the same time, I was just at so much peace. It was just such a blissful, bittersweet experience. And I remember just getting up off the chair, putting her, placing her body back in the bed. And I just stood over her and I just looked at her body and I just went, wow. I'm like, this was your temporary temple. You are no longer in the, I mean, it was just like I was going through this whole experience of, where are you, you know? And I remember picking up her things, walking to the elevator, and I'm pushing a button to get on the elevator. There was a friend there with me. And I said, I just looked at her and I was just like, I don't even know how to feel right now. Because it was, again, there was just like this peace, but then there was this sadness, and then there was this celebration, and then there was this sadness. And all of a sudden I hear this voice, clear as day, wait for me, I'm coming with you. And I get on the elevator and I think, my friend's gonna think I'm absolutely crazy. I wonder if she heard that, because it was very audible. It was very clear. And we both got in the elevator. We just stood there. She looks over at me. She said, did you hear that? She heard the same thing. She heard the same thing. And so it was the most, it really did catapult me into the work that I do now. In the support that I give people. I remember going home, because the grieving process, as we all know, is very interesting. It doesn't just go away, even though I knew that I knew that I knew, and I had all these evidences that she was alive and well. She was showing up and giving so many signs, and just all over the place. I mean, like, woo, all over the place, for reals. And I think it was just one of those things like, I'm out of the body, I'm out of the body. I'm not 7 pounds and 5 months old, you know, I can do whatever. And she's very vocal. And remember I talked about how she brought people together. I would get phone calls. Oh my gosh, I just experienced Kiva. Oh my gosh, she said this to me. Oh my gosh, I just experienced Kiva. And this is what she's doing. And this is what's going on. And so I would get all of that. And I remember going home one day and the grief hit, just a random day. And there's actually a scientific or a health terminology for this, and I cannot remember what it is. It's when you walk into a room or you walk somewhere and you get knocked off your feet and you've come down pretty hard. Literally, physically, I got knocked like a sweep off my feet and knocked flat on my back. And I cried, and it was grief that knocked me down. There was nobody in the house with me. It was just me. Well, not really, because we're never alone, right? And it was the grief because I was being strong for my children. I was being strong for my friends. I was being strong in the community, you know, because I had some idea, right? I'm this spiritual person. I know that there's more. And it knocked me on my back. And I remember just crying there, and the room was pitch black, pitch black. And then I sat up and I wailed, and then I stopped and I asked myself this question. If I know what I know, what I know, and I get evidence all the time of her existence and her role in my life, what is everyone else doing? Because this pain is so painful physically. When she passed, I felt like someone literally punched a hole in my chest and ripped my heart out. That's the only way I could describe it to people. When they would say, what does it feel like? Or what did it feel like? I said, well, the only thing I can think of is someone punching a hole in my chest and ripping my heart out. And I thought to myself, what are they doing? What are they doing? Is there anyone supporting them? Are people saying the most darndest things and bringing more insult to injury? You know, how are they doing if they're wallowing? You know, what are they doing? And then it was in that moment that I realized, oh my gosh, just share my story. Just remind everybody it's okay to 20 years later to have emotion come up. Now when the emotion comes up for me, I don't attach it to anything at all. I allow the emotion just to simply come up. But remember, 20 years later. It wasn't like that 10 years later. It wasn't like that 2 years after her passing. The first year I told people I actually did pretty good. Story, yeah. Second year, I was on my face. Third year, you know, so it was always different. It was almost like there was something going on. And then one time Kiva came to me and she says, the reason why we want you to feel the emotion is because that's how we access you. And I said, but sometimes when you access me, it's so painful, I can't do anything for the day. I can't move, I can't function. And she says, if you're willing to just be patient with yourself and feel the emotion anyway, and be willing to just be patient and kind and gentle with yourself, you'll notice that the pain will lessen. It will lessen and it will lessen up. It'll just lift up and lift up. And so when I began to practice this consciously, because how am I going to support and assist other people if I'm unwilling to go into the practice of this, feeling the emotion anyway, right? And honoring the emotion. And every time that I've done that, she's come through and she has taught me something new to assist other people. And even to assist me. It's like I'm learning from myself, but then she's also showing it on a global level of how to assist others as well. So one of the things that she gave me what I call the BGLs. And I was actually driving the car when this happened. And she said, BGLs, remember the BGLs? Breathe, grieve, and live. She says, and when you're not in the grieving process, or you might have a good day. It's in that good day that you actually practice conscious breathing. The inhale, the exhale, the inhale, the exhale. And she said, flip it around. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the nose. Inhale through the mouth, exhale from the mouth. But she said, have it be a practice, because when you go into this anxiety or this stress or this grief or whatever emotion's coming up for you, she says what will happen is your body will naturally kick in and start the breath for you. Why? Because it's the practice. And that's why it's so important to go into the practice of we'll talk about that. The prayer and the meditation practice every day. And even if that prayer meditation practice is just for 5 to 10 minutes a day, it allows you to be really focused on the breath and really be about the breathing component. Now, when I talk about the prayer, I'm talking about a heartfelt prayer. If you have a scripted prayer and it works for you, that's great. But I'm talking about the one where you're so in tune with you that you are just in a space of, for me, because I always say we cannot tell other people how to grieve. We can share insights, right? Insights. Because innately within you, you already know what to do, because you have this infinite and this most powerful spirit that is who you are, that truth about you, the stuff, that part of you that is not conditioned by the beliefs and the systems that have been placed upon you, or you've allowed to be placed upon you. So we're talking about that infinite awareness component of who you really are. When you're willing to sit in that space daily, or in the evening, or whenever you find the time to sit there and just be willing to be in the stillness without attachment to anything, just in the stillness, that connection becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. Now, they just told me to tell you that, so. So the BGL, so breathe. The more it becomes just a natural practice for you, on those days that it's the toughest, your body will automatic kick into gear for you. Because, you know, I don't know about you, well, yes, I know that many people that have gone through that process, the first thing that I hear from my clients, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And I say to them, you must breathe, you must breathe. And then they begin to breathe, because I'm breathing with them, right? And if you think about it, the breath oxygenates every cell within your body. It gives you that, what do they use it in the Reiki term? Life force energy that you feel you are lacking in that moment. It gives you strength. It gives you ideas, and it gives you creative ideas, and it assists you with greater insights. And it assists you with connecting with your loved ones, very much so. The more you're willing to sit with yourself, have a conversation with yourself, the easier it becomes to make that connection with others, seen and unseen. You see, it's all connected. How we do things on this side affects over there, which is right here. And how we do things here affects what's going on there. So the more we're willing to step into that space and that energy of really going into that breath and allowing ourselves to experience that grief, and choosing to still live and honor that presence of our child, that presence of anyone that has transitioned or passed away in our lives, the more we're willing to do that, the easier it is to make connection. I mean, there's so many tools and there's so many things, and you hear so many talks that are out there, and this is where you get to see all of that as beautiful tools and insights. But when it comes from here, that's power. When it comes from here, you know that you know that you know that you've made that connection. You felt and you picked up that that evidence or those signs that are coming your way. Now, I don't want to talk too much, because I really want people to ask questions. If you have any questions about the story and everything else, or tools, or how do you know if the person's making connection with any of those type of questions, we're not doing readings tonight. Well, yeah, we're not, unless someone kicks in, which I'm sure they are, but yeah. But I want to just make sure, I know I left off the grieving and the living part. Okay, so the breath, and of course the grieving is basically honoring the emotion that is coming up for you in the moment. If you cannot get out of your bed and you feel like, I can't do today, curl up in your bed, grab a green blanket. Green is the color for healing, right? Green is very nurturing. Wrap yourself up in that blanket like a Twinkie, okay? And bask in that emotion and soak it in. Another thing that you can do, go out, be in nature, be by those trees, be in that green, look at the green grass, look at that, you know, because green represents love, green represents compassion, green represents kindness, it represents healing, it represents abundance, it represents so many different things for us. That is why we're surrounded with that on our planet. There's no accident that there's a lot of green around, okay? And the color is there, right? And then when you have a moment, what we ask you to do is to come up for air. And this is the part where we say, live. Living doesn't mean I need to go out and party and whoop, whoop it up. You know, if you choose to do that, okay, great. But when we say live, it's the simple things that you do. Unwrap yourself from the green blanket. You go in the kitchen. You wash a dish. You dry the dish. You put the dish away. That's living. You grab a broom. You sweep the floor. Maybe just a small section of the floor. You go back to bed. You see? But these simple steps is going to keep you so that you don't feel like you're drowning. You're drowning or you're losing yourself. And I'm going to use my hand as an analogy. So here we are. We're in the grieving process. We're right here. Before you go here, we want to catch you here. And that's what your children are saying. Before my mom and before my dad goes here, I want to catch him here. And the way to catch you here is through your breath, your acknowledgement of your emotions, being gentle and kind with yourself. If you can't do the day, don't do the day. If you need to call into work, you call into work. Wrap yourself up in a green blanket like a Twinkie. But then we ask you to come up for air. Go wash that dish. Go dry that dish. Put it in the cabinet, and then go do whatever else it is that you want to do. What you'll notice is maybe you'll go back to bed. But the more you do the small activity or just that living component, you decide you want to go outside instead. You see? And then the inspiration starts to come, and then the signs start to come, and the symbols start to come, and the evidence starts to come that your loved ones are there and they are making connection with you. Okay? And that's the beauty of it. I absolutely love and adore that. I didn't get it at first until I started doing it. And I started doing it because I trusted my daughter, you know, and I trusted the emotion behind it and everything else. But the biggest thing here is be gentle and kind with yourself. If you need to be where you're at, be where you're at. If you can't do whatever everybody is expecting you to do, you don't do it. You don't do it.
LaVonne, there are some questions in the chat box.
Okay.
Can I ask you some questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me, y'all, for wiping my nose. It's from the tears earlier. We're all family. We don't care. No judgment here.
No, goodness gracious. Rosie is asking, how do you really know it's a connection, not our imagination? How do we learn to connect?
How do we learn to connect? Oh my goodness. Okay, so we talked about this earlier. When you're willing to sit in the stillness, especially when you're sitting in the stillness, you're sitting with yourself. People tend to avoid that that portion or that part because sometimes it's hard to sit with ourselves for many different reasons. We'll sit with others and we'll show compassion to others and kindness and all of that. But when it comes to sitting with ourselves and sharing, showing that for ourselves, it's a little bit more difficult. So the first step is to be willing to do that. The more that you're willing to sit with yourself, you'll get clear on what you're hearing. Is that my voice? Is it their voice? What's really going on here? But when you're sitting in the stillness, it becomes more finite. It becomes more clear. A lot of times, if you're wondering you're making it up, most likely you're not. Because that's when we start second guessing ourselves. That usually means that something just happened and we're not quite sure what it is. Majority of the time, that's exactly what it is. Does she have an example of something that may have shown up for her that she's questioning and wondering about?
I'll ask Rosie. Rosie, would you like to unmute yourself and maybe tell a little bit about something that you've experienced? Are you?
Hi, how are you?
I am well.
Thank you for sharing your story. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for listening.
Well, as you were saying, for examples, sometimes, well, I get signs all the time from my son, all the time. And sometimes unbelievers would tell me, it's just me, I'm missing him, making it up on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I know because there's specific signs when I need him the most. And when I'm having the hardest time, there'll be some sort of sign. My Google would immediately change into a song that he would play from a spiritual Christian station. that when we playing this particular song, a red cardinal would just show up on my window. It's things a white butterfly. I was crying hysterical, and that one white butterfly hit my window and came in. And I know that's him, just trying to take my mind off of the crying and the sadness and to focus that he's still here.
And you know what? And that's the thing right there. Honor the sadness, honor the tears, because what that does is it actually makes the connection. Okay, so there's two folds here, because I know that when we are in the emotion of sadness, sometimes that vibration or that energy makes it a little bit complicated or a little bit more challenging for us to tap into their presence. But it doesn't mean that their presence isn't there when you're going through the sadness. Does that make sense? And
Yes.
So a lot of times when that real primal sadness comes upon you, a lot of times it's because they're probably a lot closer than you can even imagine. And your heart, and we talked about the heart and making that connection, and the heart registers that, and it kind of does the little oomph. But when we're willing to sit in that sadness and take that breath in the sadness, and we just say to ourselves, I'm embracing what is true for me right now, right here, then all of a sudden we hear this little tap on our heart. And then there's a little conversation that starts to happen, or we get a visual, or we start feeling like, maybe that job is not the best thing for me to take right now. So they're taking any opportunity, whatever it is, to get a hold of you. They will move heaven to get a hold of you. And so a lot of times those emotions are there, at least Kiva's told me that. The emotions are there because we're attempting to make contact. We're attempting to, so it's not always sadness. It could be in the joy of something, because of course, again, that's a high vibrational energy, right? And we can probably feel and see and notice those signs a lot clearer and a lot better. But again, even in the sadness, even though that's a different shift of energy, it still means that they're probably most likely very close by. Now, with all the energy that's going on the planet right now, they are very close. People are talking about it's almost as if there is no veil anymore. And so that makes it easy access to us and vice versa, right? And so right now they know that we're kind of going through it as a system, as a species, as a planet, and they're doing everything and rallying to do everything to assist and support us. So of course our children are going to be leading that front as well. And a lot of times they're like, join me in this. We kind of have an idea of what's going on. Last week, Kiva was letting me know that there was a lot of hustle and bustle in heaven, that people were coming and going, and that there was these new souls coming in, and they're different from any other souls that have come here before, and that they're here to bring change, and that they're committed to assisting and supporting us. And then you've got our babies that have come and they've transitioned from the physical back into form of spirit. And they're part of that as well. So there's a lot going on right now. And the biggest thing for everyone on this Zoom call is to know this, okay? When I'm looking at you, I'm hearing that same unison message that's coming through. We are alive and well. We are here to support you. We love you. We care about you. There's a lot more going on than you can even imagine that is taking place. Do not be consumed by so many of the worldly situations that are going on, even though we know that it's having a direct effect on all of you. But the more that you're willing to sit in the stillness and to truly connect with your spirit, remember who you really are, because you are not human first. However, we do honor that you have taken on these physical temples and has made this journey here, and that you have been very successful in what it is that you're creating. And the reason why a lot of things that are going on right here, right now for the planet is because you have been praying for it, you've been asking for it, you've been meditating on it, you've been thinking about it. Doesn't matter what walk of life you're coming from or what religion or what belief system you're coming from, you have all collectively brought this and called this forth, and it is getting cleaned up. And as you focus and as you make time for yourself and as you administer the self-care, as some of you see sometimes as selfish, which it is not, it is the highest form of love you can give to yourself and you can give to others. But the more you're willing to do this, the clearer your path will be, the calmer your mind will be, the calmer your emotions will be. You will not react, but you will be a firm, you will be a firm stand for love, for connection. And we are here to tell you again and again and again, we do not die. This is not our first rodeo. We are soul family. We have made certain agreements. And we are living up to our word, and we are staying connected. And when you grieve us, we honor the grief, we honor the emotion, but we ask that you see us as we are now, our true form, our true form. And when you're able to see yourself in this true form and in that spirited form, then you will begin to notice our true form. And we will come to you with absolute clarity, with absolute intention, with absolute focus, and you will know without a shadow of doubt, it is us. Now, after tonight, this evening, your dreams will increase. Your signs will be bigger and grander and simple. You will, and this is our commitment to you, you will know that no matter how we transition, no matter how we die, no matter what transpired, that we are with you. We come and we go as needed. But the moment you give out the call, the moment you speak our names, we are there. There's no reason for us to stay from you. There's no reason. This relationship continues. Who taught you? Who taught you, and what belief did you buy into that when we die, there is separation? This is a continuation of our relationship. This is a continuation of our family unit. And what we're asking of you is to continue to allow us to be a part of and develop an even stronger relationship. It's not about the hereafter. It's not about waiting. It's about now. We're here with you now. Well, hey. Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you, Rosie. Oh my gosh. So I'm going to unpin you. I have some other questions and I'd love to get to them. And one of them is from, let's see, Kalisa, is that, Callison, I'm sorry. She asked a question and I'd like to take it just a little bit further. She says, thank you so much. Your smile is so warm. Did you speak with Spirit before Kiva passed or only after? I'd like to also just ask about your sister. Did you have communication with your sister after she passed?
You know what? Not for years. Mm-hmm. Not for years. And the beauty about that is, what the beauty is about that is that I've learned because of that experience, not having that clear communication with her right away. And I do believe that she was around and that there were times that she really intervened and kind of assisted me in certain parts of my life. But it was almost as if her agreement was to keep the rest of us alive here physically. And I don't even know where I'm going with this, as far as with Sharon. She it's almost as if she had a certain position or role to play in my life. And part of that was, but the good news is I'm conscious of that. I'm very much aware of it. Part of it was to let me continue the journey and to get to where I'm at so that I can now have that connection with her. And she doesn't come around a lot. She doesn't come around a lot. The person that hangs out a lot is Kiva. So that's interesting.
So did you have any kind of ability before Kiva passed? That's what
I was always intuitive since I was a child. I was always intuitive. People were not very kind to me, and I had a challenging childhood. I had a mouth on me, and I could tell people where to go and how to get there, coming from Boston. And we never hesitated with that. And I was the girl that was on the picnic table, preaching to people and giving them in my backyard and telling them what for and always talking about something about life. But I would see things as a child. I would hear things as a child, but being so embedded in my first set of indoctrination in the Pentecostal faith, nothing against anybody here if you're part of that, but I was always told that that's bad, that's evil, that's this, that's that. And again, that's why I've come to the place where when I'm teaching, I'm doing the connections and communications I'm talking about, that is, growing up, I came from that fear base. And so I just shut that down. I just kept that quiet, because I didn't want to, I'm going to communicate with something that's not of the highest. Well, that's not going to serve. That's not going to work. And plus I was in fear mode and scared and all that other stuff. But it was as I was growing up and I was having more experiences, I was forgiving people. I was choosing to be accountable for my life and for my life experiences. I stepped out of victimhood. I wanted more. I just kept seeking truth. And then finally came to the place where, I realized that my truth was right here and that I am part of, the creator and creation and that I could trust what was coming through and what I was feeling and things like that. But it was always off and on. Like I could always find things for people. I could always get this gut, what we call hut. It's your heart and gut feeling. And it would be spot on or something like that. And I really don't focus on a lot of those things as much anymore because I'm being directed, like I said, again, through spirit. It's more of the, the speaking, the private sessions, things like that. But I'm finding that I'm here to teach. And a lot of times when I'm teaching, sometimes loved ones will come through, sometimes they won't. And I used to wonder, what was that all about? And then finally, a loved one came through for a client and said, the reason why you're doing it this way is because we want them to really start embracing who they really are, because there's urgency for that. We can continue to go out there. There's tons of tools out there. There's tons of people out there. And do we receive comfort from psychic mediums and all that? Absolutely. But how would it feel to really know that you know that you know and receive confirmation from the inside out and not the outside in? That's
beautiful,
what we are.
LaVonne. And I just want to tell you, we have a lot of comments in the chat box. Wow, green blankie. Doris loves that. She has 2 green hearts next to it. Linda says, baby steps, perfect message. Sophia Bree is saying, loving ourselves seems to be the key. Alicia says, wonderful story and great ideas for healing. Excellent advice. Anna Molina is saying, this is so wonderful just listening to her. Susan is saying, what a beautiful story and spirit. Carol's saying, amen. Julie is as well as everyone. Well, Anna is saying, I'm so within me now, how beautiful I'm breathing. I think that I just wanted to tell you that first of all. And then second of all, I also wanted to ask you, let's see, there was a question in here. First of all, Beth Maxwell, her daughter Vivian passed just recently, and her mother just passed of COVID, and she's a week ago. and she can't seem to connect with her yet like she does with her daughter. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. You know, the transitioning process is just that, a transitioning process, you know, and so immediately when you mentioned her mom, it was tell her to write your mother, just write her, because sometimes we have this idea of it may look like this or it may look like that, and the way that she connects with her daughter, sometimes we connect differently with different people. A lot of times it's not always the same way. So sometimes it'll be through the spoken word, the written word. Sometimes we'll feel our daughter, we'll see our daughter, we'll hear our daughter, or sometimes we'll just hear our mother or just feel our mother, things like that. One of the main things that's going on in that situation is that the grief is so heavy because she's experiencing what we call what? Compounded grief. Compounded grief. Or complicated grief. We'll just call it compounded because it's just one thing on top of the other. And so when that is there, no matter how much you know, no matter how much in tune you are with spirit, internally she's processing. And the energy is just a little bit heavy because there's so much processing going on internally. And so the best way to release that, the best way to make connection with her mom right now is to write her. Just write her a letter. Mom, I can't feel you. I honor that. Mom, I know I am going to feel you. I honor that. And I love you. And that's just an example of just keeping it real and keeping it raw and keeping it, just authentic and honest. And to be really, really, really gentle with herself. Please be gentle with yourself and show yourself kindness and wrap yourself in that green blanket like a Twinkie. But the more she writes her mom, the more she'll feel her. The more she writes it, the more she feels her. So when she's writing her true emotions about, I can't feel you, or I can't hear you, I don't feel any signs coming from you. You see, that's honesty. And in the honesty, you're raising your vibration. And I would hear people say, well, if you say this and you do this, your vibration goes up or it goes down, your energy goes up, your energy goes down. There's truth to all of that. But when you're honest, the vibration always shifts upward.
Well,
sometimes
she knows that her beautiful mom is with Vivian and it brings her peace, which is true. I mean, we all
absolutely.
know that. And
but write her, because her mom is trying to connect with her. Write her a letter.
So
I think when she writes her, honestly, I think that it'll like pop something, and when she sleeps, she'll come and visit her. Or she might find herself writing and she'll just go straight into automatic writing, where she can actually hear the response. So a good way to do that, you can ask a question, just close your eyes. Even if you're writing chicken scratch, doesn't matter, just write whatever comes up. Don't second guess it. And don't think, you might think, oh my gosh, what did I write? That doesn't make sense. And then 2-3 days later, it makes complete sense because she's had the dream. But she's like, there's a lot going on that affects our communication and our connections with our loved ones right now. And I have to be really honest with this group. They keep saying that you're grieving, people are going through the grieving process of their loved ones, but also there is this is a whole nother subject for a whole nother day. And it's one of my favorite subjects because it's pretty powerful. But there is a global grieving going on right now. And it's impacting all of us. And that's why we keep saying, please sit in the stillness and really connect with your spirit so that you can literally be connected with the self first before with the world. But this global grief that's going on, it's compounding our grief as a collective. It does affect us. It does affect us because we're really one family, one unit. We just got bodies and all of a sudden we just saw ourselves as different. Oh, well.
I just want to tell you that you have so many other wonderful comments. Michelle is saying, wow, amazing. Gina is saying, oh, thank you, Rosie, so powerful and beautiful and hopeful. And so this was from when you were talking to her. Michelle is saying, love that, heart and gut.
Hut.
Which is great. A hut. Yes.
Honor your heart and gut. Hut.
Yes.
Hut. That could be a cheer.
Yes. So Julie is saying you have such a powerful healing spirit, LaVonne. Thank you so much. And Beth is saying, I will try that. Thank you. I will start writing to my mom like I do to Vivian. I will, with 4 exclamation points. She'll do it.
Yay.
And,
I want to share my heart. Look, everybody, I'm sharing my heart.
Oh, yes. Labradorite. Yes. It's beautiful. And then Lindsay is saying, thank you for that about the writing, which is important. Anna is also saying, what a wonderful idea to write. Linda is saying, how much does being sad and in grief affect communication with our children?
It does create static. It does create static. So it's a little bit of a challenge. And it's like I said earlier, just because you're in that sadness and you're in that grief doesn't mean they're not close by. Just assume they're there, even when you can't feel them. I guess that's the main thing that I really wanted to put out there, because sometimes it's not that it's difficult for them to get to you, but it's more of a challenge for you to hear them or for you to receive when you're in it deep. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Let's see. Thomas J is saying, I love your sincere, warm, and heartfelt advice. I will now look at the green of the world in a different way. I love that. Obviously, it is the heart chakra as well. And let's see. Blanca is saying, I was told by a wonderful medium that my son was going to send me a wonderful sign within 2 days. Little did I know that he would be sending me a mourning dove that stayed on our home roof for 2 days this weekend, which is wonderful. Those are beautiful. And then let's see, Michelle is saying, one of my most significant signs from my son Travis was a song from Travis, the Invisible Band. I've never heard of that myself, but that's interesting. I had never heard of them. I should Shazam the song. It's called Side. It talks about the other side. It also also that the grass is always greener on the other side. I found a piece of his art, and that said, the grass is always greener on the other side.
Oh my goodness.
9 years for me. So still getting signs after 9 years. And that's something that I think is really important for everyone on here to understand too, that we get signs forever. They're not going to stop.
It's been 20 years and I'm still getting signs with Kiva. And when I speak, a lot of times she comes and she supports that. And sometimes she'll come through and she's actually speaking. And then, you know, we're just a dynamic duo. So yeah, they really want to continue the relationship. It's like, we're not done yet. I left my physical body, but we're not done. You know, and for those that may have had questionable relationships with loved ones that have transitioned, they still want to clean that up if they can. And we trump that, of course, because we're the ones still here physically, that decision. But there's still so much healing that's going on, you know. But they're like, we're not going anywhere. There's too much to be done.
Well, Pilar is saying, I had a tough day and this has uplifted me profoundly. Thank you. Jenny and Dave are saying, LaVonne, thank you so much. Your daughter is wonderful. I love the elevator stories. So anyway, and then Joan is saying, thank you, LaVonne. Valentina is as well. We truly appreciate you coming into this Zoom meeting and telling us about your life. And certainly you haven't had an easy upbringing. You are just such a bright light and you've done so much with your life and helped so many people. And I truly appreciate you doing this. And I have put your website in the chat box. So it's www.lavonnewells.com. And then I'll be putting this on YouTube. And what we normally do at the end of the meetings is that we have everyone unmute themselves and say thank you and goodbye. So if everyone would like to, that would be wonderful. Thank you from me. And
thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Love you.
You're wonderful. Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you
amazing.
so much. You've taught us so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, so wonderful.
So